Although Mitch was an old friend and he trusted him with his life, he was concerned that maybe there was something wrong with the pill. What would it do to him? Would it kill him? Was it FDA approved? Just as Kevin was contemplating spitting the pill out, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. Then his whole body felt like ice. It reminded him of that time one of his friends had convinced him to jump into Lake Michigan with his polar bear club one cold winter day. Then his eyes rolled up in his head, and he fainted. When Kevin opened his eyes again, it was almost dusk. "What's that horrible smell?" he said to himself. The funk was almost enough to knock him out again. Kevin got up off the floor and discovered that the smell seemed to come from his own body. Great! He ran his hand along his forearm and felt something strange. His entire body was covered with some sticky yellow liquid. It had soaked through his clothes entirely. Gross! What the hell is this? Kevin sprinted to the bathroom to take a shower. He must have washed himself for more than half an hour. Then he changed his clothes again. He gave the house a quick cleaning and sprayed the air with an entire can of freshener. It seemed impossible to get the stink out of the room, especially the spot where he'd fainted. It was stained a pale yellow, and he wasn't sure he would ever be able to get it out. If Lily or her mother come home now, they'll think I've been frying dog crap, he thought. I can't believe someone told Mitch that this would help me. So far, it's given me an intense pain in my gut, knocked me out, and made me smell like an outhouse on a hot July day. Are there any more fun side effects? Kevin kept muttering to himself as he cleaned the room furiously. Just as he finished, Lily and Dorothy came home. "Hi, Kevin. What have you been cooking?" Dorothy put her shopping bags on the sofa and turned her head to look at Kevin, who was helping Lily. Kevin coughed uncontrollably a few times. "I had something to do, so I haven't cooked yet. Why don't we eat out tonight?" Dorothy gave Kevin a funny look and said, "You're home all day and you don't have a job, but you don't have time to cook?" Lily found his excuse a little suspicious too. Even though she thought her mother was right, she wanted to give her husband the benefit of the doubt. "You know, I was thinking the same thing," Lily interrupted. "There's a new place on the north side. I think it's in Evanston. They say it has great stuffed spinach pizza. Let's head over there this evening." Then she gave Kevin a subtle tug on his sleeve and motioned for him to go to the bedroom with her. Kevin was curious to find out what Lily had to say. And did she have any more news about her grandmother? Kevin still hadn't gotten over his weird reaction to the pill that Cook gave him, and he really wasn't in the mood to make dinner right now. But he was pretty happy that Lily had stood up for him with Dorothy. He followed her back to their bedroom, wondering what news she might have about Grandma Jones. Was Lily's grandmother finally going to put her in charge of the Williams Media contract? Lily spoke first. "You should have learned by now. Don't make random excuses. We need your help around the house, and that includes cooking meals." She took out the new clothes that she just bought one by one while Kevin helped her hang them up in the closet. Kevin didn't offer any more explanations. He just nodded and replied, "Okay." Lily was satisfied that they'd settled the matter, so she brought up the latest news of her grandmother. "It's Grandma Jones's birthday the day after tomorrow, so you have 2 days to try and find something nice, and nothing cheap or tacky. Please don't embarrass me in front of my family again." When Lily told him this, Kevin remembered that he and Grandma Jones shared the same birthday. But usually everybody spent so much time fawning over Grandma that they forgot about him, so he wasn't much in the mood to celebrate. Over the past 2 years, every time Grandma Jones had a birthday party, Kevin would just make believe that the celebration was for him. Kevin noticed that Lily was staring at him, which made him come back to the moment. He nodded in agreement. "Don't worry, I'll remember it, and I'll find her something nice." "Thanks," Lily replied. She really wanted to ask him for some advice about the partnership with Williams Media, but she also wanted to handle the problem with Grandma Jones herself, so she decided not to say anything, for now. Grandma Jones's birthday bash was held at Chez Robin, one of the finest restaurants in Chicago. They rented out the whole place just for the party. Kevin didn't arrive in the same car as Lily and Dorothy because he was out picking up the birthday present for the family matriarch. Lily sat next to her mother and saved a seat for her husband. The more she thought about it, the more restless she got. For the past 2 days, she'd asked Kevin over and over what he planned to get for her grandmother, but he insisted that he wanted to keep it a secret. This really worried Lily because her grandmother was hard to please, and she didn't want to disappoint her. When Kevin finally arrived, Lily saw that he was holding a simple gift bag like you find in a drugstore. This sure ticked her off. This was definitely not okay. Lily wasn't looking forward to spending another embarrassing evening with her family because of Kevin's behavior. She let out a heavy sigh. When Kevin sat down at the table, Dorothy frowned and stared at the gift bag he was holding. "You could have at least had it wrapped. I hope the gift you picked out is presentable." Kevin was a little uneasy at Dorothy's response. I didn't have time to wrap it, but the wrapping isn't important. It's what's in the bag that counts." Kevin was tempted to let Lily and Dorothy take a peek in the bag. He was sure they'd be pleasantly surprised by his choice. He started to lean toward Lily, offering the bag to show what was inside, but she put her hand out and stopped him. She wasn't interested in finding out right now. Lily rolled her eyes. "I don't want to know. Later, when everyone is giving Grandma her presents, you can take advantage of the confusion and just stuff it into the pile so we're not embarrassed in front of my family. Again." Kevin was a little disappointed at her reaction. "All right," he said, "whatever you say." Everyone had already started to give their gifts to Grandma Jones, who was seated on the dais at the front of the room. In the place of honor, of course. They were all secretly competing with each other to see who would give the most valuable or rare gift to Grandma Jones. So far, the best presents were the beautiful diamond brooch that Matilda gave Grandma, as well as the antique Victorian bust that Jason had presented to her. Everyone agreed that it looked a little like Grandma when she was younger. Grandma Jones took Matilda by the hand and smiled happily. "You've always brought me such great joy, Matilda. I'd love to keep you around here with me forever, but it's probably time for you to get married." Matilda didn't know how to respond. Married? She didn't even have a boyfriend. "Don't worry, Grandma. I'll always be by your side." Everyone who heard this was deeply moved. Matilda returned to her seat, which happened to be next to Kevin's. As she sat down, she heard Kevin say, "Nice choice. That brooch is from Wales, mid-18th century. Probably belonged to the royal family. Not bad." This piqued Matilda's curiosity. Most of the members of the Jones family thought Kevin was kind and dull and uninteresting. Even Matilda had always looked down on Kevin, but his comment was far from dull. "How did you know it was an 18th century royal brooch?" she asked him. "And yes, it is from Wales. Do you know a lot about jewelry?" Kevin shrugged and nodded. "Yes, I know a little. May I ask how much you spent?" "About $20,000, Matilda answered candidly. "I bought it from a friend of mine. At that price, she said she would just break even." Kevin shook his head. "I hate to tell you this, but that brooch isn't worth much more than $15,000. Matilda wasn't happy to hear that. "$15,000, are you sure? I got it from a good friend of mine." Kevin lowered his voice so nobody else at the table could hear him. "There are a few factors to take into account. First, you have the diamonds. They're a nice size, but the cut, color, and clarity are important too. I could see from here under these lights that they're not the absolute best. But the perfect diamonds cost a small fortune. Then there's the provenance. The most famous royal brooches are all well known and, once again, way over $20,000. Still, it's a very nice piece of jewelry. But I think your friend could have given you a lot better break on the price. It doesn't sound to me like she's your best friend. Just my opinion." Matilda had a puzzled look on her face as she listened to Kevin. Just then, someone walked up to Grandma Jones and announced, "Grandma, Bradley Smith is here." She smiled and said, "Bradley is here? What a lovely surprise. Please show him in." Kevin and the others turned around to look when they heard this. They all watched Bradley Smith walk in wearing a navy blue Tom Ford suit and shiny new Oxford shoes. He was holding a small gift box in his hand. He'd spent his last penny on the clothes and the gift just to make a good impression on Grandma Jones. He knew that he had to succeed today or he'd be ruined. Bradley walked confidently up to Grandma Jones and gave her a kiss on each cheek. "Happy birthday, Grandma Jones. I wish you health, wealth, and happiness. I'm sorry that I'm a little late. The Dan Ryan Expressway was backed up with the construction traffic. Please forgive me." Grandma Jones knew that Bradley had always been interested in Lily. If only she had been able to match them up a few years ago. But instead she had married that failure Kevin. "Oh, I understand. I know you have a busy schedule. It's very considerate of you to come to my party." Bradley smiled and looked over toward Lily. "Actually, I'm not just here for your birthday. There's something else." He paused for a moment. "Grandma Jones, I want to ask your blessing to marry Lily." She looked Bradley in the eyes and then shifted her gaze to Lily. Was she actually taking this request seriously? Lily was already married to Kevin, but this didn't seem to bother the Joneses. Nobody had ever really accepted Kevin into the family. They even treated their hired help with more respect, and that's saying a lot because they didn't treat them that well either. "Bradley, you do realize that Lily is married, doesn't that bother you?" she inquired, even though Grandma Jones knew what she wanted deep in her heart. "Grandma, I'd like to ask Lily to be my wife. You know I've always seen you as my very own Grandma. Please say yes." The whole time he was saying this, Bradley was acting like Kevin wasn't even there. Finally, Kevin had had enough of this. He stood up from his chair and yelled, "Stop! What the hell is wrong with you? I've been sitting right here the whole time and you're asking if you can marry my wife right in front of me?" Kevin had lost it. Now it was Jason's turn to stick his nose in things. "Who do you think you are? You have no right to speak here. You're not a member of the family." "I may not be much, but I'm better than you jackass," Kevin spat back. "I'll kick your ass, loser," Jason said as he rushed towards Kevin. Jason had been spoiled by Grandma Jones since he was a child, so he never learned to control his temper. He had countless fights when he was in school, but never faced any consequences. Even as an adult, working in the Jones family business, he got into a lot of fights and arguments. He also got involved with some pretty tough criminals. It didn't look like his family was going to be able to make Jason control himself this time either. One of them commented, "Kevin's really going to get it now." Another replied, "Serves him right. Who does he think he is? He's just ruining Grandma's party. Why doesn't Kevin just keep his mouth shut?" Someone else at the next table said, "That's right. What gives him the right to say anything about our affairs?" Everyone was upset to see this, but nobody made a move to stop Jason. They were all expecting to see Kevin get beaten up. But Kevin stood his ground very calmly. Lily called to him, "What are you just standing there for? Hurry up and leave." She was surprised at how worried she was for Kevin right then. Things hadn't been great between them lately, but maybe they'd been together for so long that she couldn't bear to see him get the crap knocked out of him. Jason threw the first punch, but Kevin stepped to the side to avoid it and caught his fist. "So, you're going to get violent, are you?" "Okay," Kevin said coldly. Then Kevin twisted Jason's wrist with a move that his friend Emo had shown him back when he was his family bodyguard. Everyone there heard a sharp pop, and Jason let out a loud moan. "Why have you always been such a douche to me?" Kevin said as he let Jason drop to the floor. They were all shocked to see this happening, especially at Grandma's party. What was happening to their pleasant little get-together? They were all trying to get a grip on it. Jason felt like one of his ribs might be broken. He sat on the floor yelling in pain as he held his wrist. Just then, Dorothy walked up to Kevin and slapped him in the face. This caught Kevin off guard. He staggered a little and took a step back. "How dare you ruin Grandma's birthday?" Dorothy was furious. "After all that we've done for you, this is how you repay us? Get out, now!" By now, Jason was slowly standing up with a little help. "Oh, he's not getting off so easy. You're a dead man." Jason pulled out his phone, scrolled through his contacts, and made a call. But Kevin wasn't paying any attention to Jason. He was staring blankly at Dorothy. His penetrating stare made her uneasy. He finally spoke. "Lily and I have been married for 2 years. Things have been hard while I tried to get back on my feet, but I thought we still had a pretty good relationship." He began to smile before he continued. "Maybe it's my fault that everyone here looks down on you and Lily. Maybe I deserve that slap. I don't know. But from now on, we're even." Kevin clenched his fist tightly. "From now on, I'll have nothing to do with this family. I've had enough of this. If you want me to come back, you'll have to make Grandma Jones get down on one knee and beg me."
Don't let your excitement die! The full audio series is on the Pocket FM app. Tap the link in the description to install now.
Then Kevin turned to walk out. Lily stared at Kevin. She didn't know what to think. It was like he'd become a completely different person, a complete stranger to her. Everyone stood there in shocked silence. As Kevin walked towards the door, Jason shouted, "Stop him! Don't let him leave!" But no one moved. They all wanted Kevin to leave and for this horrible scene to be over. Jason saw that no one was helping him and ran over to grab Kevin by the shoulder. "Didn't you hear what I just said? You can't leave!" Right then, a white van stopped abruptly outside the restaurant's entrance. Then, multiple powerfully built men jumped out of the van, holding baseball bats and armed to the teeth. It looked like the party was about to get even worse. Grandma Jones's birthday party had just been completely ruined by the fight between Jason and Kevin. It started when Bradley asked for Grandma's blessing to marry Lily, who was obviously already married to Kevin. Unfortunately for Jason, Kevin kicked his butt in the fight, so Jason called up a friend to help. Jason was relieved to see his friend, who showed up pretty quickly with a few of his toughest bodyguards. "Drake, thanks for getting here so fast." The man gave a slight nod. "What's going on, Jason?" He pointed at Kevin and said, "Drake, this is the piece of crap I told you about." One of the Joneses recognized Jason's friend. "Drake? That's one of the toughest crime lords in the city." "Wow," someone else said. "Jason sure has friends in low places. Look how fast he got over here with just one phone call." Lily heard this and got scared for Kevin's safety. "Kevin, run," she shouted. Lily knew that if Drake got his hands on her husband, he'd end up dead, or worse. But Kevin didn't budge. This made Lily even more desperate to help him. She stood up and started to move toward him. Before she got 2 steps, Bradley stopped her. "Lily, what are you doing? Drake's a very dangerous man." Everyone was afraid to interfere because of Drake's vicious reputation. Drake took a drag from his cigarette and casually threw it on the floor. "Who's the bastard who did this to my buddy Jason?" When Jason heard this, he walked over towards Kevin. He could feel the eyes on him and knew that everyone was impressed that he had such a powerful ally on his speed dial. He'd be bragging about this for years. But no one could imagine how Jason and Drake ever got to know each other. It was simple. The first time they met, Drake almost beat Jason to death in a sparring match at the gym. That set the tone for their relationship. Ever since then, Jason tried his best to make friends with the man. He figured it was better to have him as a friend than an enemy. So every month he would give Drake a wad of cash to keep him on his good side. As long as Jason kept this up, they'd still be friends. "Quick, get out, Kevin!" Lily shouted, but Bradley stopped her again. By now, Drake was standing face to face with Kevin. "So you're the one who hurt my friend," Drake snarled. "You've made a huge mistake." "So are you his friend or just his guard dog?" Kevin said coldly. "Do you know how long it's been since someone talked to me like that?" Drake put his hand on Kevin's shoulder and leaned closer. "A long time." Kevin didn't even flinch and replied, "I don't care how anyone talks to you. This is between me and Jason." Jason was happy to see this. He was sure that Drake would finally get Kevin out of the way for good and things could go back to normal. He knew that Drake was a man who feared nothing and no one. "This is going to be good," he thought to himself. "Man, you've got cojones," Drake said as he narrowed his eyes. As he looked at Kevin, he got the feeling that he looked familiar, but he just couldn't remember where he'd seen him before. "It doesn't take cojones to know what's not a threat," Kevin replied coldly. This really got everyone's attention. How could Kevin talk to such a dangerous man like this? Grandma Jones scowled but didn't say anything. She wasn't used to dealing directly with people like Drake. Jason clenched his fists like he wanted to take a swing at Kevin. "This guy obviously hasn't heard that you just don't mess around with Drake Cook. Let me teach him a lesson for you." Kevin glared at Jason, then turned back to Drake. "Your last name is Cook?" Kevin slowly took his phone out of his pocket. "Do you happen to know Mitch Cook?" Drake's face froze when he heard this question. He gave Kevin a puzzled look. Most people didn't know just how well Drake knew Kevin's friend. Kevin spoke into his phone. "It's me, Mitch. I'm here with a mutual acquaintance. Drake is standing right in front of me." Kevin then handed his phone to the man. Drake hesitated a moment and took the phone. While he talked, his expression changed from anger to confusion to worry. Drake hung up the phone and reached out to hand it back to Kevin. As usual, the Joneses began whispering to each other, trying to figure out what they had just witnessed. "I can't believe my eyes. What's wrong with Drake? Who did Kevin call?" Kevin looked the man dead in the eye and asked, "Are you sorry now?" "Yes, Mr. Williams, I'm very sorry." Drake's forehead had started to bead with sweat. Of course, Kevin had just called his friend Mitch to set Drake straight. The message he gave him was short and sweet. If he touched a hair on Kevin's head, he would lose his own head. Jason was confused. "Drake, what are you waiting for?" Seeing that Drake still wasn't giving Kevin a beating, Jason couldn't hold back any longer. He decided to take another swing at Kevin. But before his fist even made contact with Kevin's face, Drake grabbed Jason and threw him to the ground. Then Drake picked Jason up by his tie and slapped him in the face. "What kind of mess have you gotten me into?" Drake kept cursing while he slapped Jason over and over. "But Drake, what did I do wrong?" Jason asked, holding back the pain. "You really screwed up this time." Drake spat on the floor. Then he turned to the men who had come with him and gave them an order. "See if you can knock a little sense into him." They immediately surrounded Jason and started dragging him towards the side exit. Grandma Jones was distraught at the sight of this happening to her favorite grandson. She looked over at the other family members for help. A few of them started to move hesitantly towards Jason. They weren't really sure what they could do, but they knew they just had to obey Grandma Jones. But they stopped dead in their tracks when they saw Drake pull a knife out of his jacket and say, "If anyone lifts a hand to help him, he'll answer to me." The few young Jones men who had stepped forward immediately took a few steps back after hearing Drake's threat. Talk about a rock in a hard place. They didn't want to disappoint their grandmother, but they were also powerless against this man. Then Drake turned back towards Kevin and spoke calmly. "Mr. Williams, again, please accept my apologies." Everyone was stunned to hear this. When they saw Drake apologizing to Kevin, they were very confused. Was this real? Kevin didn't reply. He just gave Drake a deadpan stare. "I'm very sorry to have bothered you, Mr. Williams." Drake apologized once more. "My phone, please," Kevin said. Drake handed him his phone and began to speak. "Sir." But Kevin cut him off. "Yeah, whatever." Then he impatiently took his phone back, turned around, and left the restaurant. When Kevin was gone, Drake let out a long breath and told his men to stop slapping Jason around. Then he walked over and spoke to Jason, who was lying on the floor in a daze. "Don't ever use me like that again, or you'll regret it for whatever remains of your useless life." Then he took his men and left. When the van had driven away, the Joneses slowly walked over and surrounded Jason. "Jason, are you all right?" Grandma Jones asked him. Her voice was filled with concern. Suddenly, one of her other grandsons rushed into the room. "Grandma, Mr. Cook is pulling up outside." They looked out the front window and saw 2 black SUVs and a Maybach limousine stop at the curb. A young man in a suit quickly hopped out and opened the passenger door of the sleek limo. A man in a nicely tailored Armani suit stepped out and calmly walked towards the door. The Joneses were surprised, and not for the first time that day. "Grandma Jones is really important. Even someone as powerful as Mitchell Cook has come to see her on her birthday." Grandma Jones didn't know what to think at this point. She had only met Cook once before at the Whistler Hotel. They didn't have any relationship to speak of. She just knew him by his reputation. Plus, she knew that she hadn't invited him. So what did he want? As he walked up to her, his bodyguard stood back at a respectful distance. With a smile on his face, he inquired, "Miss Jones, may I ask if Kevin is here?" As soon as he said that, the crowd fell silent. "I'm sorry, Mr. Cook. Kevin has already left," she replied in a very embarrassed tone. "Oh, well, since Kevin isn't here, I won't take much of your time. I understand that today is your birthday. Please accept the small gift." Cook snapped his fingers and one of his bodyguards walked up and placed the gift on the table. After Cook and his men left, the Joneses sat there in silence. Some of them had turned pale. At the moment, nobody was very happy about how the party had turned out, and no one was in the mood to open the box to see what the gift was. They filed out and headed to their cars to return to the Jones family mansion. Everyone was still thinking about what Kevin had said before he left, and they were very worried about what might happen next.
Don't let your excitement die! The full audio series is on the Pocket FM app. Tap the link in the description to install now.
When the Jones family arrived home after the disastrous birthday party, they sat down in the living room to try to figure out what had just happened and what they should do next. Lily was still in shock about the whole scene. She couldn't believe what she had witnessed Kevin doing and saying. Jason was still shouting, complaining about his injuries and demanding that someone take him to the hospital. Just then, one of the young Jones men announced from the doorway, "Grandma, President Wright of West Chicago International has arrived." They all looked at each other wondering what this could be about. West Chicago International had a fine reputation in the Chicago area, and pretty much throughout the world for that matter. So even President Wright was stopping by to wish Grandma a happy birthday in person? Grandma Jones sure was famous. However, Grandma didn't look too happy about her visitor. For one thing, she didn't know President Wright. In fact, she'd never even met her once. Of course, Grandma didn't want to insult her guests, so she sent everyone to greet her at the door. "Hello, Mrs. Jones." About a dozen bodyguards followed Adriana as she strode into the Jones family mansion. Grandma replied sweetly, "I've heard many wonderful things about you. It's an honor to see you here today." One of the younger Jones men commented to his cousin, "So our family has connections with the West Chicago International Group? I never knew we had so much influence." As Adriana walked into the room, there was a low murmur as everyone started whispering to each other. "I'm very sorry that I wasn't able to meet you at the door, President Wright," Grandma Jones said with a smile. Adriana searched the room with her eyes, and then shocked them all by asking, "Mrs. Jones, is Kevin here today?" "I'm sorry, President Wright. Kevin isn't here at the moment." The disappointment was visible on Grandma Jones's face. "Since Kevin isn't here, I won't take up any more of your time." Adriana motioned for one of her bodyguards to place a beautifully wrapped gift box on the table. "This is a small token of my esteem. Happy birthday." After saying this, Adriana turned around and left with her entourage. Jason's face fell, and he wasn't the only one in the room who looked shocked. Why were all of these rich, powerful people looking for Kevin? What the hell was going on? "Someone go get Kevin and bring him back here," Grandma Jones barked at her family. Lily reacted first and immediately rushed out of the room. Bradley followed closely behind her. Then Grandma sent the young Jones men out of the mansion with orders to find Kevin and bring him to her. They weren't to return until they'd found him. Lily quickly took out her phone as she hurried toward the street. As she walked, she dialed Kevin's number. He answered after a couple of rings and she asked excitedly, "Where are you?" "I'm on my way home. Don't worry, Lily. I'll go and pack my things. I'll be gone by the time you get home," Kevin replied coldly. "No, please wait for me. I'm on my way," Lily practically shouted. After Lily hung up the phone, she stopped a taxi that was passing by. When Bradley saw her getting into a taxi, he hurried to the parking lot and jumped in his car. Half an hour later, Lily arrived at home. When she got out of the cab, she was surprised to see Bradley running towards her. This wasn't something she wanted to deal with right now. Bradley grabbed Lily's wrist and asked her, "Lily, what are you doing here? Did you forget something at home?" He gave her a strange look and then continued. As soon as you finish, come back with me. Grandma is about to make an announcement to everyone about our marriage. Let me go, Lily struggled to say. I'm not going with you. Are you here to see Kevin? Bradley took a deep breath and his eyes burned with anger when he thought about Kevin. I have to admit that I underestimated him, but he's out of your life now. And Grandma has agreed to let me marry you. Don't you see? Now you can be my wife. Let the bastard go. Bradley was starting to get anxious. His biggest worry was that the birthday gift that he bought for Grandma was a fake. Once the family had it appraised, they would figure out his true intentions and his whole plan would be exposed. Bradley was desperate. His only way into the Jones family was through Lily. After that, he planned on taking advantage of Grandma Jones's love for him. Then he could use the Jones family fortune to help him make a comeback. Bradley felt a little excited when he realized he would be able to kill two birds with one stone. No, I have to see Kevin one last time. Lily hesitated for a moment before she continued. Bradley, I don't care what Grandma said. I'm not going to marry you. Why? Do you really like that bum? Bradley roared angrily. Holy crap, Bradley. I've been married to him for 3 years. Do you think I could have spent that much time with him if I didn't have some feelings for him? It was hard for Lily to admit it, even to herself, but she did have feelings for Kevin. No, you have to come with me, right now, Bradley roared. He started to pull at her arm, and Lily tried to pull herself away from him. While they were struggling like this, a black car slammed on its brakes and stopped at the side of the road. Dorothy quickly got out. Lily! Bradley, what are you two doing here? Dorothy said. Why aren't you back at the mansion? Grandma's going to announce your marriage. Lily gritted her teeth and replied, No, I'm not going back. I have to see Kevin. Bradley looked in Dorothy's eyes and then turned to Lily. He came up with an idea and forced a smile. It's still very hot outside. Why don't you and Lily get in the car and cool off? Then you can talk some sense into her. Inside, Dorothy smiled and said, Lily, look at how considerate Bradley is. He only wants what's best for you. That bum Kevin wouldn't think of doing something like this. Lily, let's head straight back to Grandma's. Why would you want to stay with Kevin anyway? After Dorothy said this, she handed her car keys to Bradley. Bradley grinned as he got into the driver's seat and locked the doors. What Dorothy and Lily didn't know was that Bradley had put child locks on the car door. They wouldn't be able to leave. Bradley, pull over. I want to go home to Kevin, Lily demanded. Can't do. I told you I would do whatever it takes to make you mine. And now that I have you, I'm not letting you go, Bradley threatened. Lily tried to get out of the car, but it was too late. She and her mother, Dorothy, were locked inside. The black car slowly drove away. Kevin, who had been watching from the window, saw everything. An hour later, Bradley parked outside of an ominous house and brought a rope over to tie both Dorothy and Lily up before bringing them inside. Help! Someone come quickly! Dorothy shouted, but to no avail as Bradley threw them in a dark back room. Hours later, Bradley returned to the room and nodded to both Lily and Dorothy, who were tied up on the ground and screaming for help. Bradley was drying his hair with a towel as he walked into the room. You really ought to save your strength. Even if you scream until you're hoarse, no one will hear you. Bradley, let us go this instant. You'll never get away with this. Dorothy was in a panic. She couldn't believe that the man she thought would make the perfect son-in-law would actually do something like this. Shut the hell up, Bradley yelled angrily. Then he grabbed Dorothy's hair and said, I'm ruined. After all of these years of hard work, I've got nothing left. Lily was completely stunned to hear this. What? She said. Didn't you buy the Dream Lover necklace for me? Even though Bradley had told her over the phone that it wasn't him, she thought he was lying so she wouldn't worry about him. After all, an authentic Dream Lover was really too expensive. Bradley laughed at her naivety. Ha! Lily, you really don't think I'd buy you a real Dream Lover, do you? You're not that special, Bradley added with a sneer. I was just toying with you. Bradley let go of Dorothy's hair and knelt down in front of Lily. He looked into her eyes. It was a cold, harsh look. Then he put his hand under her chin.
Don't let your excitement die! The full audio series is on the Pocket FM app. Tap the link in the description to install now.
"What's wrong with you?" Lily gasped. There was venom in his voice as Bradley complained to Lily. "Don't pretend you're so innocent. How many men have you been with? Why else wouldn't you know who gave you the necklace?" This made Lily furious. "Bradley, what have you been smoking? I was sure the necklace couldn't have been from Kevin, so I had no idea who else would have given it to me." She really wanted to stand up and slap Bradley on the cheek, but she was still tied up. So Lily spat at him. Bradley's face turned bright red and his mouth twisted. He raised his hand like he was going to slap her. Dorothy tried to calm him down. In a stern voice, she asked him, "Bradley, how can you even think of hitting Lily? Weren't you talking about marrying her? Just let us go. We can all pretend this never happened." Bradley turned and raised his hand like he was going to give Dorothy a slap. "Do you think I'm a fool?" Bradley sneered. "I had tried to do this the right way, but Lily just had to reject my offer. So now I'm stuck with both of you." He slowly stood up and took out a cigarette. "Bradley, how can you do this? Let us go, do you hear me?" Dorothy was so mad she was on the verge of tears. He took a long drag on a cigarette. "How can you be so dense? I really don't know how Kevin puts up with you." Bradley flicked his cigarette ashes on Dorothy's face, making her wince. Then Bradley turned his back on Dorothy and stared at Lily with a deranged look on his face. He ran his hands through his hair as he sobbed. "I had adored you for so long. Today I can finally get what I wanted." Suddenly, the door burst open with a violent kick. Bradley spun around, but when he saw that it was only Kevin standing at the door, he relaxed a bit. Lily was the first to react and shouted, "Kevin, call the police!" "Kevin, save me!" Dorothy added. "Shut up or I'll shut your mouths for you," Bradley said as he glared at them. Kevin saw Lily with her hands tied and he became enraged. In spite of everything, Lily was his wife. Whatever problems they had in their relationship didn't matter now. This was a matter of life and death. "Bradley, you'll never get away with this. Let Lily go. If you want revenge, take it out on me," Kevin said firmly. But Bradley wouldn't go for it. He taunted Kevin. "What can a useless piece of crap like you do to someone like me?" Then he added, "I admit I was surprised to find out that you know Mitchell Cook and Adriana Wright, but so what? They can't help you now." "Do you really think I came alone?" Kevin asked. Right then, they heard sirens out in the street. Bradley's expression changed from anger to fear. He picked up a knife that was lying on the table and ran over to hide behind Lily and Dorothy. "Kevin, you actually called the freaking police?" Bradley growled. "To deal with a piece of crap like you, you're damn right," Kevin said coldly. "If you release Lily now, you might get a lighter sentence." Actually, Kevin had called the police as soon as he arrived in Bradley's neighborhood. The problem was he had never been to Bradley's place before. He had to go down the block and check the houses one by one. That's what took him so long to get there. Bradley waved the knife and shouted, "No way, you're lying. As long as I have hostages, the police can't do a thing." "Bradley, if you want a hostage, let them go and take me." Lily was floored when she heard Kevin say that. Her eyes filled with tears. But instead she said, "Kevin, no. Get out of here while you can." But Dorothy was okay with the idea. "Lily, what are you saying? If he wants to be Bradley's hostage, let him. Why should we stay here?" Then she shouted at Kevin, "What are you still standing there for? Get over here and take our place." Bradley stared at Kevin while he figured out what to do. Meanwhile, the police outside had already told the Jones family what was happening. The officer in charge of the scene was a lieutenant named Emmett. She was wearing the typical Chicago police uniform, including the hat with the checkered band and the city flag patch, the one with the 4 stars. Grandma Jones showed up with the older members of the family, the ones who made most of the big decisions. "Officer Emmett, how is the situation now?" The Jones family had been sitting in the great room admiring the gifts that Cook and Adriana had given to Grandma. They were trying to recover from the horrible fight at the restaurant and hoped that maybe the day would get a little better. That's when they got a call from Officer Emmett. Grandma's party was definitely over for this year. Emmett answered directly in typical police style. There is a man named Kevin Williams currently speaking with the kidnapper, identified as one Bradley Smith. We will give you an update as soon as one is available, ma'am. Grandma Jones was completely overwhelmed by the situation. She pressed for more information. Officer Emmett, are you sure you didn't make a mistake? Bradley is a fine young man. I can't believe he would do such a thing. Emmett kept an eye on the house while she replied, Whether you believe it or not, that's the situation. Suddenly, another officer ran up to Officer Emmett. In a very serious tone, he reported to her. Ma'am, the sniper in position on the roof across the street radioed in that Mr. Williams seems to be discussing something with the kidnapper. It appears that they are discussing a hostage exchange. Exchange? Yes! Let them make an exchange, Grandma Jones blurted out. Emmett definitely didn't like this idea, and she shook her head as she considered their options. Seeing the police officer's hesitation, Grandma Jones spoke again. Officer Emmett, you might not know this, but even though our family isn't well known, we do have some influence in the city. Dorothy and Lily are very important to us, and this can't go on much longer. She continued, But Mr. Williams is different. He has been pretty useless to us for the past few years. If he can get Lily and Dorothy back, then let him do it. He can make himself useful for once in his life. Officer Emmett clearly thought that this was a terrible idea. She had dealt with countless families in her career, but she didn't understand what Grandma was thinking. No matter what she thought of Kevin, he was still a human life, and it was the police's duty to protect him. Meanwhile, in the house, Bradley was deep in thought. Kevin smiled slightly and asked, Bradley, what are you waiting for? I'm your only chance to get out of this. If you let Lily and Dorothy go now, the Jones family may forgive you. Don't risk losing everything and spending decades in prison. I know you don't really want to hurt Lily. Bradley didn't buy it. Shut up! How the hell do you know what's right for me? Kevin broke into a big grin. I know because I'm Lily's husband, not you. You want her, but you can't have her. When Lily heard Kevin say this, she broke into tears again. Of course, she knew what Kevin was thinking. He wanted to get Bradley so pissed off that he'd be willing to exchange hostages. A second later, Bradley pointed his knife at Kevin. You want to be a hero and save this damsel in distress? Okay, you get your wish. Put your hands over your head and slowly walk over here. Not so fast, Kevin shot back. I wasn't born yesterday. If I come over, what is there to keep you from changing your mind? He paused for a moment and said, We'll count to 3. When we get to 3, I'll walk over to you and you'll let Lily and her mom go. Bradley agreed. Okay, but no tricks. At the count of 3, Kevin slowly walked over. As he brushed past Lily, he whispered, Lily, don't be afraid. You're safe now. Don't wait for me. When Lily heard him, she trembled. As she walked towards the door, she turned her head and saw Bradley grab Kevin and put the knife to his neck. Kevin didn't resist at all. He just looked at Lily calmly. Dorothy grabbed Lily's wrist and pulled her out of the room. Lily, let's get out of here. When they got outside the house, their family quickly surrounded them and made sure they hadn't been harmed. Little Dorothy! Lily, are you all right? Grandma Jones rushed over and gave them a hug. Grandma, we're fine, Lily replied softly. Thank goodness, now let's go. It's too dangerous here. Grandma Jones turned around to head back to their car. But Grandma, Kevin is still inside, Lily shouted. When Dorothy heard her daughter say this, she couldn't believe her ears. But honey, we're out now. Why do you still care about that good-for-nothing? Grandma Jones kept walking. When she got to Officer Emmett, she said to her, We're ready to leave now. The seasoned officer looked at her in surprise. Isn't that person inside a member of your family? No, we have nothing to do with him, Dorothy replied coldly. Ignoring Lily's resistance, she pulled her daughter by the arm and left. Dorothy didn't care what would happen to Kevin.
Don't let your excitement die! The full audio series is on the Pocket FM app. Tap the link in the description to install now.
Since Dorothy didn't close the door behind her when she walked out, Bradley and Kevin could see them walk to safety and leave Kevin behind. Inside the house, Bradley mocked his hostage. "Ha! Well, Kevin, it looks like we can finally see just how much Lily's family really cares about you." "We've never really been that close," Kevin answered calmly. To him, the most important thing was that Lily was safe now. "Yeah, I'm sure you don't care what they think," Bradley said sarcastically. But Kevin didn't care what Bradley thought, or even what the Joneses thought. He decided to push things a little further and asked, "Aren't you curious why Williams Media suddenly pulled its support? They even withdrew all the funds that were invested in your project." "How did you know that?" Bradley asked. Bradley had never told anyone that he was backed by Williams Media, and almost nobody knew that they'd pulled out. Even Dorothy and Lily only found out when he told them about it a little while ago. But how did Kevin, this nobody, know so much about his business? Kevin smirked and asked him, "Did someone at Williams Media tell you that you'd offended someone? I'll bet you don't even know who it was." "How the hell would you know?" Bradley was pissed. The knife shook a little in his hand as he took this information in. Meanwhile, out in the street, a police officer suddenly ran up to Officer Emmett. The concern showed in his voice as he gave her the update. "Ma'am, according to the observer's report, the hostage just said something that seems to have really upset the suspect." "Are there any further details? What are they doing now?" Emmett said. She was exhausted by the whole ordeal, especially trying to get cooperation from the Jones family. But she was trained to keep herself together and be patient. Just as she was about to give the order for the sniper to take a shot as soon as he had a clear line of sight on the kidnapper, another officer ran up to her. With a puzzled look on his face, he reported, "Ma'am, for some unknown reason, the kidnapper suddenly knelt down in front of the hostage." "What did you say?" Officer Emmett was obviously shocked at this development. She quickly walked to the vantage point across the street from the house and took a pair of binoculars from one of the SWAT team members. She definitely saw Bradley kneeling in front of Kevin. Then Bradley threw his knife on the floor. "What the hell is going on?" Emmett couldn't help but ask. Nobody could have predicted this outcome. It was the first time that any of them had ever seen a kidnapper kneel in front of their hostage. Of course, none of them could possibly know that Kevin had just revealed his true identity to Bradley. At first, Bradley didn't believe it. He thought that Kevin was just a bum. How could he be related to the family that owned Williams Media? But when Kevin took out his phone and showed Bradley his bank balance, he believed him. Bradley was overwhelmed. It was like his whole world had turned upside down. He would never have believed that the person Williams Media said he had offended was Kevin, the most useless person he knew, or so he thought. Sobbing uncontrollably, Bradley hugged Kevin's leg and said, "Please, sir, I beg you to let me go. This was all my fault." Kevin thought for a moment. "Bradley, as long as you sincerely admit your mistake, I can let you go. But don't forget that you've broken the law. Even if I forgive you, all those police out in the street won't be so generous." "That's fine with me, Mr. Williams. After all, nobody really got hurt," Bradley blubbered. To him, Kevin was much more terrifying than the police waiting for him outside. As long as Kevin was serious about letting him go, then maybe he could return to his former life after he got out of prison. At least he'd have a chance. Kevin said firmly, "All right, you can go outside and surrender. After you get out of prison, if I never see your face again, then I won't press charges." What did Kevin care what happened to Bradley now? Then Kevin pushed him aside and walked out of the front door. With a curious expression on her face, Emmett walked up to Kevin and asked, "Are you hurt, sir?" "Thank you for your concern. I'm fine." Kevin shrugged his shoulders. "If there's nothing more, I think I'd like to leave." Emmett would have liked nothing better after this strange event, but there was always paperwork to do. "I'd like you to go back to the station with us first to make a statement. Do you have time right now?" "I'm sorry," he replied, "but I still have some things to do, so it isn't convenient for me at the moment." "All right then. Please give me your phone number. I'll contact you if we need any further information for this case." As Emmett said this, she took out her phone and opened her contact list. Just as Emmett was about to say something else, Bradley was brought out of his house by a group of officers in bulletproof vests. He was in handcuffs and tried his best to avoid having his face filmed by the news crews that had set up in his neighbor's yard. Kevin turned around and walked away. He had already made up his mind to never go back to the Jones family. He would buy a place closer to his office. Suddenly, a line of limousines pulled up along the curb. Cook quickly got out of the lead car and gave Kevin a warm handshake and a pat on the shoulder. "Kevin, I've been looking for you for hours. Are you all right?" "Let's get out of here and I'll tell you all about it," Kevin said as he followed Cook to his limo. Emmett watched all of this and took a mental note. Of course she knew what kind of person Mitchell Cook was. Even the chief of police had to be polite to him. But Cook practically gave Kevin a hug. Just who is this Kevin Williams anyway? Emmett wondered. A little while later, Cook was in his office at the Whistler Hotel. Drake was standing contritely in front of Kevin. You could see beads of sweat starting to form on his forehead. Cook spoke first. "I hope you can forgive me, Mr. Williams. It's my fault that Drake offended you." Then he walked over to Drake and gave him a patronizing pat on the cheek. "What do you have to say for yourself, Drake?" "I had no idea who you were, Mr. Williams, but I do now. Please let me go. I'll do anything you want to make it up to you." Drake was actually trembling with fear. Kevin thought for a moment and then realized that Drake could be of some use to him. "Sure, I'll let you go, but I'll just ask for one thing in return. You are going to keep an eye on Jason Jones for me from now on." "Thank you, sir." Drake was grateful, but Kevin didn't say anything more to him. He didn't even bother to look at him. Then Kevin looked at Cook and said, "Thanks for setting up this little get-together. I have something to take care of, so I can't hang around. Give me a call so we can finish that lunch that got interrupted." A couple of days later, Kevin went to a real estate agent down by the Loop in downtown Chicago. With his sleeve, he wiped the sweat off his forehead. It was a hot day and he couldn't feel any breeze from the lake to help cool him off. "Damn, took me 2 hours to get here," Kevin muttered to himself as he walked into the reception area. "Hello, sir. Is there anything I can help you with?" a staff member asked as she walked up to greet him. Kevin scratched his chin and said hesitantly, I'm looking for a condo." "I'm sorry, but we're on a break right now. The listings are over here in this corner. Feel free to take a look." As usual, Kevin had dressed down, so he didn't look like he could afford much of anything. They sized him up and decided not to waste any time with him. After all, the lowest price condo they had available was a studio for about $300,000. There's no way this guy could afford even that. On a break, Kevin thought to himself. Then why even let him in the door? The agent repeated, "I'm sorry, sir. We're really on a break right now. Our lowest offering is $300,000. If there's nothing else we can do for you, please show yourself out." She really wasn't interested in helping him at all, was she? The agent had already made up her mind that Kevin was probably working on the construction site down the street. He just came in to look around and enjoy the air conditioning. At least that's what she assumed. At that moment, 2 people walked up. Kevin was startled to see them and it showed on his face. "Kevin, what are you doing here?" Lily asked. She sounded a little embarrassed. Kevin didn't answer her question. He just looked at the man standing next to her. "What's this?" Kevin thought to himself. "I've only been gone for 2 days and you can't wait to start looking for a new husband?" The man with Lily suddenly blurted out, "Lily, what did you just say? This is Kevin? That useless ex-husband of yours?" This was Grant Butcher, the perfect son-in-law Dorothy had just found for Lily. When the real estate agent saw Garrett, she immediately walked up to him with a flattering smile. "Why, Mr. Butcher, what brings you in today?" The enthusiasm she showed was the exact opposite of the indifference and impatience she had just shown when speaking to Kevin. "I just took my fiancé to take a look at the home you recommended. Please go back to what you were doing. We'll just browse some more listings," Garrett said with a smile. The agent thanked him and smiled. Then she turned around and said to Kevin, "Why are you still here?" Please leave or I'll ask security to show you out." But Kevin didn't pay any attention to her. He just kept staring at Lily. "Kevin, please understand, it's my mother." As Lily's voice trailed off, she turned her head away. "Oh, now I understand." Kevin was relieved to find out that this was Dorothy's idea, not Lily's. Then Garrett turned to speak to the agent. "How can you let someone like this in here? He's smelling up the place." "I'm very sorry, Mr. Butcher. I already asked him to leave, but he just won't listen to me." The agent was getting more and more irritated at Kevin. Because of him, she had just been scolded by her manager. Just as she was about to call the security guards to make Kevin leave, Garrett reached out to stop her. Then Garrett had a thought. He could use Kevin to show Lily how successful he was. That was sure to raise him up a notch or two in her eyes. "You're Kevin Williams, aren't you? Aunt Dorothy told me about your situation. You and Lily were married for about 3 years, weren't you?" Garrett didn't care if he pushed some of Kevin's buttons. He wanted to look assertive. "What business is it of yours? She's still my wife," Kevin answered. He was pretty ticked off at this nonsense. "You've really got some nerve," Garrett shot back. "Aunt Dorothy told me that she would let Lily divorce you as soon as possible. So from now on, please don't interfere in her life. I'll take good care of her." Kevin shook his head. What the heck was this? He and Lily hadn't even gotten a divorce yet. "What did he say to you?" Garrett turned around and asked the agent. "He said he wanted to buy a condo," she answered. Then she gave Kevin a sour look. "Buy a condo?" Garrett laughed. "I hate to tell you this, but we sell high-end real estate here. Do you think you'd even qualify for a mortgage?" "Well, I don't think that's really up to you," Kevin retorted. "Are you in charge here?" "Yes," Garrett said as he straightened his tie. "I'm the manager." "That's nice." Kevin took a good look at Garrett and pulled his phone out of his pocket to make a call. Just then, Rachel suddenly walked up to them. "Why, Lily, what are you doing here?" "Rachel, what a coincidence." However, Lily was in a pretty bad mood and she wasn't up for any small talk, even with Rachel. "I came here." Rachel didn't even finish what she was saying when she saw Kevin making a call on his phone. Her expression immediately changed. "Kevin, how you doing, boss?" Kevin gave Rachel a slight nod and turned his back on the group to continue his call. "Lily, who's this?" Garrett asked. "This is my best friend, Rachel," Lily replied faintly. Rachel added as she smiled and held on to Lily's arm. "We're like sisters." Garrett seemed to understand now. "So you're Lily's sister. I'm the manager. You're here to tour the property, right?" Garrett smiled and reached out to shake her hand. "I'm Lily's boyfriend. Aunt Dorothy introduced us to each other. Since we'll be married soon, I guess I'll be your brother-in-law from now on. Take a look around. There's a place here that you like. I can give you a family discount." Garrett made sure that he looked over at Kevin proudly, like he was saying, "See, you don't stand a chance against me." He wasn't ready for Rachel's response, though. She shouted at him, "Who do you think you are? You don't deserve someone as nice as Lily. And my only brother-in-law is Kevin. Who the hell are you?" In shock over her best friend's sudden shift, Lily wondered what had changed Rachel's opinion of Kevin.
Don't let your excitement die! The full audio series is on the Pocket FM app. Tap the link in the description to install now.
When Rachel finished speaking, she looked over at Kevin and saw that he had just finished his call. Garrett objected to Rachel's put-downs and snapped back at her. "What do you know? Listen, I'm Lily's new boyfriend and Aunt Dorothy wants us to get married. So what do you say to that?" "Do you think you deserve her?" Rachel turned and put her hand on Lily's arm. "Lily, how can you even be with a schmuck like this?" Rachel felt helpless. She never expected Lily to actually abandon Kevin. Then she thought to herself, maybe she still doesn't know who Kevin really is. Lily looked directly at Kevin and narrowed her eyes. My mother arranged it all. She still couldn't say no to her family. Hearing this, Rachel instantly understood and shook her head helplessly. Garrett didn't like Rachel's reaction at all. "Lily, Your friend seems to have already made up her mind about me. What have I done wrong? By then, Kevin had finished his call and walked back over to them. He stared intently at Garrett. But before Kevin could say anything, Garrett spoke again. What are you still standing here for? This isn't a grocery store. Not everyone can just walk in here off the street. Well, what if I want to buy one of your properties? Kevin asked nonchalantly. With what? Garrett asked. Did Lily give you some of her money? Kevin almost laughed out loud when he heard that. Why would he ask Lily for money? Lily interrupted them and spoke up to Garrett. You have no idea what you're talking about. No, Kevin didn't ask me for any money. Kevin snickered a little and said, I don't really like you, Garrett, but your company does have some good properties. You know, I think I'll buy the best one of your listings, Kevin continued. Since you're the manager here, you can probably answer this. Which one is the best? Wow, Aunt Dorothy said you're worthless, but you sure are good at bragging, Garrett said. He walked to a model on a table by the front window. Pointing at the beautiful tower, he said, This is the Corwin Tower. You've probably seen it going up a few blocks from here. The penthouse is available for anyone who can afford the price tag, $8 million. Garrett turned around and gave Kevin a pretentious look and asked him, Can you afford it? Kevin saw that Rachel was about to say something and he put his finger to his lips to ask her to be quiet. That's what I thought, Garrett said. This would be a good time for you to leave. Kevin didn't say anything. He just smiled. Who said I can't afford it? He replied. Didn't you hear what I said? The penthouse costs $8 million, Garrett said in a very snotty tone. Kevin ignored him. He just took out a black card from his wallet and looked at the rude agent who had greeted him when he walked in. Then he walked over and handed it to a different agent, the one who was standing near the reception desk. Wait! Garrett stopped her as she was about to go into the back room and swipe the card. Isn't this your first day of work? That's not the proper procedure. That's when the agent realized that Kevin's card didn't even have a name on it. I guess the only way to find out if my card is good is to swipe it, Kevin said confidently. Just then, Garrett's phone rang. When he saw the caller ID, he quickly stepped away and answered the call. Kevin spoke calmly to the agent who was still holding onto his card, unsure of what to do next. It looks like your manager is on the phone. Go ahead and swipe my card. He smiled and added, for the full amount. Yes, sir. Please wait a moment. She didn't actually believe that Kevin had that much money on his card, but she thought she would give it a try anyway. Where did you get that black card? Lily asked him. Lily knew about this type of card from work. Her boss had negotiated with the CEO from an international corporation who used it for major expenses. She decided to look into it and found out as much information as she could. It was even more exclusive than the Sapphire Bank card. Way more. So when Kevin took out the card, she recognized it at a glance. The agent returned after a couple of minutes. She was incredibly excited. Sir, I'm sorry to keep you waiting. Is the transaction complete? Kevin asked as he reached out to take his card back. Yes, sir, she said with a huge smile. You are now the new owner of the top 2 floors of the Corwin Tower. This is my first day, so I'm sure someone else will go over the paperwork with you. She was new to the company, but one thing she did know was she would be getting an enormous commission. What did you just say? The rude agent, the one who had met Kevin earlier at the door, was shocked. Miss Moore, this gentleman has just bought the Corwin Tower penthouse, and he paid in full, she explained to her trainer. The young woman could barely contain her excitement. And I get a 2% commission. Kevin looked at her name tag. Well, Lisa, it looks like you earned $160,000 today. Garrett finished his call and walked back to them. You still haven't left? He asked Kevin. Kevin just grinned. Garrett, in his smug way, told him, If you can buy the Corwin Tower penthouse, I will personally kiss your ass. Are you sure you want to make that bet? Remember, there are a lot of witnesses here, Kevin replied. Yes, that's what I said. Garrett straightened up and lifted his chin in a very snooty way. Rachel started to laugh hysterically. By now there was a fairly large group of employees and customers watching. They'd been drawn in by the argument between Kevin and Garrett, and they didn't want to miss the show. "But Mr. Butcher, this gentleman has already bought the Corwin Tower penthouse," Lisa told him. "What did you say?" Garrett spun around and looked at her. "It's not a mistake, sir. This gentleman just bought the property. His credit was good," she replied meekly. Garrett's jaw dropped. "Will that be the left cheek or the right?" Kevin inquired politely. "Never! Not for someone like you!" Garrett exploded. The people in the crowd began to whisper, and some of them were even giggling. "Are you sure?" Kevin asked him. "Nope, and there's not a thing you can do about it," Garrett replied. "How dare you talk to me like this? I'm not afraid of you. I work for the Williams Corporation." "Wow, I'm really impressed," Kevin said in an obviously sarcastic tone. But the onlookers were definitely impressed. They started talking about how important the Williams Corporation was and how they were building all the high-end real estate in the area. Rachel, who had already seen the extent of Kevin's influence, couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Yes," he said in a very matter-of-fact way, "I'm very high up in the organization. A good-for-nothing like you wouldn't even be able to get through our company's gate." Just then, everyone turned to see a distinguished-looking middle-aged man rush through the front door and race up to Garrett saying, "You are no longer an employee of the Williams Corporation. Please turn in your access badge." "Director Turner, what are you doing here?" Garrett didn't understand why one of the Williams directors was in his office. "It's a good thing I came down here. I wouldn't know how you treat our customers." After saying this, Turner pulled Garrett's name badge off his suit jacket. Then he walked up to Kevin. Lily, who thought that Turner was about to turn his wrath on Kevin, stepped between them and said, "Director Turner, please don't misunderstand. Kevin didn't deliberately cause any trouble here." Turner knew that Kevin liked to keep a low profile. When he noticed that his CEO was giving him a look that said, "Don't tell them who I am," he smiled kindly at Lily and told her, "Ma'am, that's not my intention at all. As a matter of fact, I want to apologize to this gentleman." The crowd, especially the employees, realized that Turner was one of the Williams executives. Lily nodded, even though she was still so confused by the whole situation. Turner approached Kevin very politely and said, "Sir, I'm really sorry that Mr. Butcher was put in a position of authority at our company. He was obviously very unprofessional toward you. Please accept our apologies." On the way over to the office, Turner had gotten a call from Miss Wilson, Kevin's chief of staff. She explained the situation and also sent the video surveillance from the office's security system, and he watched it on his phone. It was damning evidence. "I accept your apology, Mr. Turner, but if you don't fire this man in the future..." Kevin didn't finish his sentence. "Of course, sir." Turner understood right away what Kevin meant. He turned around to face Garrett and then pointed at the door. "Please leave." "Director Turner, please, you can't fire me. Vice President Ambrose is my uncle. Let me call him." Garrett pulled out his phone and called his uncle. "Uncle Ed, help! Director Turner said he wants to fire me." Garrett shouted into his phone. "Don't panic, Garrett. Where are you? I'll be right there." Everyone could hear Mr. Ambrose's deep voice coming from the earpiece. Turner snatched the phone from Garrett's hand and told him, "We're in the Corwin Tower sales office. When you get here, we'll all be in Mr. Butcher's office." Then he hung up the phone. Turner looked at Kevin and said, "Sir, I hate to trouble you, but could you please come with me to the office?" He continued to explain. "The vice president is a reasonable man. As long as you explain to him what happened, I think he'll understand the situation." Although Turner was an important manager in the company, his position was only slightly higher than Garrett's. He had to be careful not to provoke someone like Vice President Ambrose. "Edward Ambrose?" Kevin asked. "That's him," Turner nodded. Kevin looked over at Lily and then walked towards the elevator with Turner and Garrett. "Rachel, do you think something will happen to Kevin?" Lily asked nervously. "Don't worry, Kevin will be fine." Rachel patted Lily's back to comfort her. Rachel wasn't worried about Kevin at all. However, Kevin had already told her his secret, and she didn't dare to tell Lily his true identity, not just because she had given her word, but because she didn't want her husband to lose his job. The elevator stopped on the 14th floor where Garrett's office was located. "Director Turner, I advise you to leave before my uncle arrives. You're only a regional manager and there's no need for you to lose your job over this." Garrett sat back in his chair and put his feet on the desk. "Garrett, do you really think your uncle can save you this time?" Turner said as he shook his head. "I sure do. My uncle is the vice president of the company. He can easily fire you. If you want my advice, you shouldn't help this nobody. Remember, my uncle also has the power to promote you." "Does Edward Ambrose really have so much authority in Williams Media?" Kevin asked. Garrett was surprised. "Do you know my uncle?" Kevin ignored his question. "It seems like the company isn't as well organized as I thought," Kevin said to himself. "I really don't know what Lily sees in you," Garrett sneered. "I don't care what you think, and don't forget, she's still my wife," Kevin said. "And one more thing, you don't get to call Lily by her name." "You're nobody. You couldn't hold a candle to me." Garrett's expression showed his disdain. "That's enough, Garrett," Turner snapped. "Director Turner, my uncle will be here soon." He said this confidently without even looking at him. When his uncle arrived, he planned to have him make Turner apologize. "How dare you fire me, especially in front of my employees? You won't get away with this," Garrett thought to himself. A few minutes later, the office door opened forcefully. In a deep, arrogant voice, Garrett's uncle Ambrose snarled, "Mark Turner, how dare you fire one of my employees?"
Don't let your excitement die! The full audio series is on the Pocket FM app. Tap the link in the description to install now.